And yeah, my name is Torsten, and yeah, I'm excited to have you here.
I'm just walking through and I heard and I was interested. I'm listening, so thank you. Continue.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay for any amount of time. Yeah,
Thank you.
It won't interrupt us if you just want to listen a little.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you mind starting us off?
No, I don't mind starting.
Great.
I'm generally interested in all things planetary. So this is an extension of that. And I do a lot of cooking, and so I think of food in terms of health and well-being and wellness. And so this, as a medicinal workshop, is an interesting extension of that. One of my questions for you, building on what we talked about last time, is daily approaches to mushrooms. So, so I know from your talk last time that slow cooking in broth is a really great thing to do in order to access the beta-glucans. And I understand from the handout and from the talk last time about a bunch of the different properties. Mm-hmm. But because mushrooms take a long time to sort of build up, and its adaptogens in general are really helpful over time, I'm wondering about that timeline.
Okay.
So that I can understand the difference between just general goodness and the effect of placebo, and then the effect of the mushroom itself. And as a specific example, I'm experimenting with trumpet mushrooms for my dog and digestion.
Oh.
And so I'm wondering, like, over time, as a general rule, can I expect to see benefit if it's a daily thing, if it's a weekly thing, if it's a... And you can, if you want to do that in terms of humans instead of dogs, you can answer that for humans, and I will extrapolate. So that's my general context for the day.
Excellent. I'll make sure we loop those concepts in. Excellent. I love that question. I mean, especially I think it's so important for people to know, genuinely what can we expect to see, and there's in our life's change when we incorporate these habits. How do I know that it's worth it? What will I notice, or what will stop happening in my life? And I think that's really important. And I definitely wanted to focus on the everyday incorporation of these habits, things that can be, how do we make it affordable, reasonable, approachable, and realistic as a healthy life change, and then what to look for. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Yeah, what brought you here today?
Well, I have no knowledge of mushrooms, so everything you say will be new information for me. I bought them in the stores because of the taste, but one thing I didn't realize, you shouldn't eat them raw. So, and I have.
Yeah, I mean, so that already there's new things there, and that's really exciting for me. I love it when people know nothing about the topic, because then we know there's fun to be had. And a lot of people come to the mushrooms world from eating mushrooms, and mushrooms are delicious, and as a protein source, as a flavor source, as a enricher, I'm glad you pointed out in the handout there's that not eating mushrooms raw topic. So I'll review that, since I know you both weren't here for the first class. Yeah. And Nikita, do you have anything that you're especially curious about with this class?
Yeah, I think I keep going after hikes and I see all of these different mushrooms and I'm like, do you eat them? Do you not touch them? What do you do with them? And how do they help? So when I'm eating, I stick to the regular ones because I'm like, I know how to cook them.
Right.
I don't know what to do with the rest, so I keep distance. But now I'm excited to learn and see how I can incorporate them in daily life.
Excellent. Well, that is really exciting, and you'll definitely, of course, there is like that like the fascination and the fear factor together with mushrooms. And we're going to talk a little bit about some mushrooms in Maine forests, but I'm going to focus only on what's called polypore mushrooms. You'll notice that the forest mushrooms I have here, oh, this one's a bad example because it's tiny. I'm going to focus only on these smooth bottom mushrooms called polypores. You'll see they have little holes on the bottom. And as far as all the knowledge I've gotten from every teacher who's talked to me about mushrooms, there are no toxic polypores in Maine. So it's impossible to find a smooth bottom mushroom in Maine that would poison you. As far as I know, the only my teacher Rin said the only toxic polypore mushrooms are in Australia because that's where the poisonous things are found. And that's how you can remember. So we're going to discuss birch polypore and red-belted polypore today that are really easy to identify in the forest, but I'm not going to go further than that when it comes to identifying mushrooms in the wild, because this is not a comprehensive mushroom ID course. And it just, as a general safety rule, it's just an excellent place to start with these smooth bottom mushrooms. I can let you look at these. I'd love to actually start with the birch polypore. This is, actually, before I get into the birch polypore, I want to first address, so what is with that no mushrooms raw thing? Why would I say let's not eat mushrooms raw? And it's incredibly obvious in the structure of hard forest mushrooms like this, like the really woody mushrooms. But mushrooms are made out of a type of protein called chitin that is the same thing that like a crab shell would be made of. It's that same type of hard protein. In these mushrooms, like the hard shelf mushrooms, they form little tubes, and you can really, really see how hard they can be. But even in a really soft mushroom like a portobello or a maitake, how hard the proteins are can irritate the digestion. And when we're really looking at, I'd like to add mushrooms into my life in a medicinal standpoint, then we want to be cook the mushrooms long enough where we're going to break apart those hard proteins and get to the ooey gooey, slippery fibers or polysaccharides, like long chain starches that give us these amazing anti-inflammatory properties. So one, we want to be able to unlock the goodness, get our money's worth and things like that. But also it can just cause irritation in the gut lining or in the digestion period to have undercooked or raw mushrooms. So I'll hear from a lot of people, oh, I love the idea of incorporating mushrooms into my life, but they don't sit well with my digestion. I can't have mushrooms, I can't process them. But really, nobody can fully break down a raw mushroom, and then different people experience it. Some people experience it really intensely, like an undercooked mushroom. They can just or what we might think of as a fully cooked mushroom, but really it's just gently sautéed. A lot of people, it's completely natural and not like a food intolerance that somebody couldn't process that. It's just so I had mentioned in my previous class that Ashley attended, incorporating any mushrooms we work with from their solid form in a broth, as a or a simmered tea that we would let, sit for about, really about 2 hours, sit and forget. That's the way to get the most medicinal attributes out of any mushroom. And then, so that becomes incredibly relevant when we're going to talk about forest mushrooms. Yeah. But, because I'm hearing you all really curious about I'm actually going to pivot and discuss those soft ones first, not to mix you up too much. But, what about the mushrooms we love to just cook? We want to cook and we want to enjoy them and we want to eat them as part of our meals. I mean, we're not going to stop doing that. And my teachers, Katya and Rin, down at Commonwealth in Boston, they just emphasize having it be the first ingredient that you start when you're, say you're preparing all of your cooking ingredients. Just get those portobellos, get those maitake, get those shiitake, sauteing while you're doing everything else, and aim for the longest cooking time possible. And it doesn't necessarily need to be in a broth every time, but the longest possible you can is going to be the most medicinal outcome. So I'm going to start with just, I think I'll start with our most accessible mushroom, which would be the portobello mushroom or the cremini. And with the portobello and the cremini, they're definitely one that's not the most discussed when it comes to medicinal properties. I think because it's just underrated and viewed within the cooking world. But even at baseline, in any medicinal mushroom or any mushroom that we can consume, we're going to get these beautiful digestive health benefits. So whether it's trumpet mushroom that you're working with your...
I'm not actually sure it's trumpet because I may be lion's. I
Okay.
tend to...
No problem.
So don't,
But,
but I'm working with one specific one?
But
I will check at home.
whatever, but exactly, whatever mushroom it is that you're working with your dog or a human, we're going to get these lovely compounds, the beta glucans. And so when we prepare them for a long enough stretch, we're going to get this lovely polysaccharide content or beta glucan content that at the very start, no matter what mushroom, no matter how common, like a portobello, you're going to have a soluble fiber. And what a soluble fiber will always mean is you have something that is going to absorb free cholesterol within the gut. So we're going to have a fiber that will absorb liquids in the gut and help us with digestive regularity without any digestive stimulation. And what that means is we will always have some beautiful support with processing cholesterols with any medicinal mushroom. And a lot of times, people who are at risk of, developing heart disease or have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, etc. There are countless people in our country where that is their picture, and it might be work related. They're really thinking about, most of us are really thinking about every single dollar when we are shopping, and $30 a month is not going to go towards it's not going to go towards the supplement section. It's going to go towards food, and so a lot of the times what is most accessible will be the beautiful common button portobello, and so in your daily life, you pretty much can find it in any grocery store section, and they're also very commonly they're going to be the most affordable. In traditional Chinese medicine, they are considered to have a cooling property. Just like herbs in traditional Chinese medicine, mushrooms also get assigned different cooling properties, different like temperature and moisture qualities, just like a plant. And that will help distinguish them. Most mushrooms are going to be neutral to cooling in their action, and agaricus species or portobello and button, they are considered to have a cooling property. So people that have that, like, really hot lifestyle, there could be like inflamed tissues, who could get a special benefit from the portobello and the agaricus. And another category that the portobello, the shiitake, the maitake, they're in this category of medicines that are supporting the regular functions of the body, that including healthy digestion, these things that ideally we won't notice them, and ideally what we will notice is that we're not having difficulty. And so that is, that is one of the interesting things with working with medicinal mushrooms, is that it's this maintenance habit a lot of the time, building up the immunity, building up regular digestion, cooling inflammation. It's helping us to bring back to a baseline things that once were out of balance. So I feel like the biggest thing that you notice with any medicinal mushroom is that the exception to the rule has started to come back down, supporting that regularity of our functions. And so what should change in that is, these things. Okay, my digestive movements are less hot and irritating. My skin is less inflamed and irritated. The tension in my body is reduced. Generally, it's more rare that we have a mushroom such as cordyceps, where you can really feel the energy boost, or feel the opening of the lungs in the short form. A lot of times we're going to notice that kind of restructuring of the ground floor of our health. And okay, these things that should have been a healthy baseline are falling in line. But portobellos are going to be an excellent choice when we are looking to medicinal mushrooms for some of those features that are within all mushrooms, including the beautiful beta-glucan content. And it's not just that those beta-glucans are going to provide a lovely soluble fiber. And just to say one more thing about that, it's excellent when if we're looking to support the health of the heart and the cholesterol health with mushrooms. We want as much as possible. We really want a lot. We want the whole, we want our digestive serum to just be swimming with these soluble fibers, and so you want to be able to pick a mushroom that you can feel confident getting a lot. If you were to choose shiitake for that, I tend to see in the realm of 9 mushrooms a day. You'll see things like that. Like a large amount of mushrooms, and that can make choosing portobello really excellent if you're looking to medicinal mushrooms for that category of action. But also from that action, we're going to get in our bodies, when we increase our intake of beta-glucans, we are going to improve our immune detection. And so any of the following mushrooms that I discuss, because of just the beautiful makeup of the mushroom, we start to get support in immune surveillance or immune detection in the body. Basically, every issue from having a depleted immunity, where it would be much easier for us to get sick, all the way to our body not detecting cancers, has to do with us having enough ability to really detect and mark what is what needs addressing within the body. So when the way that beta glucans actually act within the system is they're not fully broken down by the digestion, and they are dispersed in the body and mark and assist in marking areas that have evaded immune detection, and so everything from really everything from an oncoming pathogen to a micro cancer that could later become a tumor. In the position where someone is trying to do everything they can to perhaps avoid cancer remission, or maybe you have cancer in the family and you're wondering, what could I do on the ground floor? Intaking these mushrooms on a consistent basis is just a beautiful way to assist your body with the tools that it needs to mark areas that need attending to within the body, but that also brings up the question of what is inflammation, and that immune response that mushrooms assist us with. And then you will also see mushrooms listed as anti-inflammatory, and you will also see mushrooms listed as anti-cancer. They are all the same action. That all comes back down to our body being able to mark and address areas that need attention, and be able to complete the inflammatory process in a way that is effective but moderate. Like a system that is having a difficult time with inflammation will mark it and then not be able to address it, or maybe not mark it at all. And so you'll see people with, and definitely, I mean, a lot of times a lot of times we will see people with a lot of inflammation, and it is not being able to be resolved, and that is, can be marked in so many different ways, and especially, this feeling of inflammation throughout the body that has begun to be unspecified. It's like where it's everywhere in the body. There's sickness it's illness that's becoming more frequent, and these signs that stress is having a difficulty being resolved in the body. These are all those same responders having difficulty with addressing inflammation, and beta glucans and medicinal mushrooms as a whole family can give our bodies the tools to make that process easier when it comes to pathogen detection, or even bringing down total inflammation. And
when you discuss the mushroom as markers, so it finds a place where it needs help, so it marks the body, and then your body starts responding to that?
Yeah. Okay. As well as there being, depending on the mushroom, directly anti-inflammatory compounds as well. So, for example, mushrooms like mushrooms like reishi or the red-belted conch or chaga are going to be incredibly high in antioxidant contents, is just one example of another way that anti-inflammatory action is completed by the mushroom, depending on its species. But one of and then so we always start with this baseline in medicinal mushrooms of there being the beta glucans assisting with that inflammation, and then have other compounds as well. So, for example, with the portobello mushroom, we do come in with these other compounds known as aromatase inhibitors that actually have a lot of hormonal action. And you'll see a lot of medicinal mushrooms having this ability to moderate our response hormones, which of course is another, it's one of the main aspects of our inflammation process. And even without the aromatase inhibitors that help prevent like estrogen dominance, and that's also what makes portobello mushrooms an excellent cancer preventative tool, because they help keep estrogens in balance. But all of those beta glucans, they'll also help our bodies to moderate blood sugar. And when we can help, because they're a soluble fiber, and then we're now not going to be as having as many ups and downs in sugar.
Quick interruption. Is anyone from bulk here?
I'm not sure. Carrie was here earlier.
Got it. Because the maple syrup is empty and the customer was looking for it.
Yeah, nothing
got it.
we can do. Yeah.
Can you take care of that, or?
The maple syrup. Yeah, so there will be other actions within the process that's going to help with addressing inflammation, since there's only so many hormonal responses we can have at once. So if our body is constantly trying to manage the highs and lows of blood sugar, we are going to have a harder time with the cortisol hormonal response really needed to complete the inflammatory process. So we get this double benefit from even just the beta glucans. I mean, and that is not all that medicinal mushrooms are, but even just from that one ingredient, one constituent, we get the immune marking, and then we also get assistance in processing our sugars, meaning there's less, urgent, there's less like burden on the insulin picture of our hormones, and making it a lot easier for us to produce our inflammatory hormones, including cortisol. So we have this lovely combination of now there's two ways that our body doesn't have to put as much energy into completing inflammation. So it really, any mushroom is going to help just knock down that burden on the body. And because the assistance to blood sugar is from a soluble fiber, it doesn't like rapidly bring blood sugar down or anything like that, making it safe for people who have hypoglycemia. But there's going to be just more regulation in the rate of sugar absorption when you have those beta glucans in the digestion at the same time, and that's just a beautiful thing there. Before we move on to the other mushrooms, just about the agaricus or the portobello cremini. It's very, very closely related to a mushroom called the almond mushroom, or Agaricus blazei, that host defense mushrooms, they really like including that mushroom in their large blend. I think it might be in their Stammet 7, but it's definitely in my community in their large blend, because it has been really extensively studied in especially Brazil and Japan for antiviral, like anti-tumor, and like just big immune support medicine. But the thing is, all of those same constituents are also found within our just lovely portobello mushroom. It's just the concentration in the almond mushroom appears to be slightly higher. But all of the aromatase inhibitors that help prevent estrogen dominance, and of course all of those lovely compounds found within all of our medicinal mushrooms, they're also just found in our or Bisporus are our grocery store portobello. So you see these things happen a lot where one mushroom species will be pigeonholed for its properties, but we can look to another mushroom within the family and get so many of the same benefits without needing to look for a mushroom found on the other side of the world. So so what somebody could expect or maybe like aim for if they were going to, really focus on working with creminis or portobellos for digestive health or for cholesterol health or for building up the immunity, you'd want to look at having, you'd want to make sure you had at least 5 to 10 grams of fresh, prepared in an accessible form. So like a really long cooking method. Maybe you sauteed those portobellos for a long time while you chopped your onions, and then you went and you did something else, and then they're on the stove, and then you put some rice over it, and you really give it a long time. By the end, okay, it's cooked an hour and a half. I would consider that you're still getting a really good amount in there. If you do things like that, or if you make a broth that has that enough concentration where you'd have 5 to 10 grams fresh every day, you could cook everything in your life with that broth. You don't have to only be eating soup, but you want to get that large amount within you. In your daily life. Aim for every day. If it's half the days, you're still really adding that into your digestion where it's really never left you. But I really encourage the broth making. Make it as concentrated as you can, and use it as a cooking tool. Your rice could be made in that broth. And you could just add back in the mushrooms that you made it with. But you want to, and you could expect to see changes in your digestion within a couple weeks, and then you'd want, or even within a couple days. And then when it comes to those, the heart health numbers, you'd want to give that some time. You'd want to give that at least a month and watch it come down slowly, and when it comes to really supporting the immune system, again, that would be in the sort of thing of, I'm starting to notice what's not happening. I'm not getting sick as often. Those are changes that I would expect to happen after a month, depending on the mushroom that you're working with. Because when it comes to working with medicinal mushrooms such as, all the way from portobello, maitake, shiitake, and oyster, there are going to be some anti-inflammatory properties that would help you within the span of a cold. So if you are doing it to recover for the antiviral properties, to recover from an illness, a really high amount of that broth in your life should, really help you reduce the length of that, cold or flu, especially if there's a digestive component. But when we're looking at, how long can I expect things to affect me? Of course, it depends on the issue, but I like to go by the Ayurvedic model of 5 days per layer of tissue. So in Ayurveda, we talk about the 7 dhatus, or the 7 tissues, being like layers of the body. Like, that's roughly what dhatu will translate to, is layer. And the first layer being like the ras, being like the fluids of the body. So if we have an issue within the fluids of the body, like our snot, our digestion, like those things are easy to change. They can be changed within 5 days. If we have an issue within the rakta, within the blood, that's the next layer. That's within 10 days. That's but that also is like issues that are really like affecting your energy level. The blood is more than just like the juice in your veins. It's like the blood concept. But a bit more like that feeling of like convalescence after being sick. The vitality of your blood has been affected. Like those types of things. It's like a 10-day improvement. That most of the time we're not necessarily focusing on that layer because it's a little more abstract. Issues within the fat also generally are not what we're focusing on because it's a little abstract, but that's the next layer. That's 15 days. Issues within the muscle, that's going to be 20 days. That's the next layer. Issues within the bones, that's 25 days. That's the next layer. Issues within the nervous system, maja, that's 30 days. And then issues within the endocrine system, so that is a lot of things. But 35 days, that's your menstrual cycle. So it makes sense that would be the 35-day mark. Your endocrine system, your deep vitality, you've been exhausted for a long time, you get sick all the time, that deep kidney essence, your hormonal ability. Those things we should not expect results from in less than 35 days. That is one round of going through all 7 of your tissues, 5 days for each tissue. So if you have an endocrine system issue, which includes chronic inflammatory patterns, you are going to wait at least 35 days for realistic results. So that is, I guess, how I tend to look at it anytime somebody asks me what can I expect from this medicine. It depends on the tissue we're trying to work with. And then if that's been going on for a really long time in our lives, we can expect, more rounds of that, 7-layer cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's also cumulative. And because digestion and gut health is so vital to all the rest of these things.
Exactly.
35 days of gut support is going to help as a foundation for the rest of it.
Yeah, this is definitely like first signs with, we're going to look for first signs in these tissues after that many days. And until then, we're building up, and because, a lot of times people will come to me about cholesterol, but digestive regularity is not there. And you can't necessarily take just anything to support your cholesterol health vaguely if you don't have your digestive regularity going on, because then you're reabsorbing free cholesterol into the bowel. And that's a perfect example of digestion being key to all of these issues. These herbs aren't, and that's one of the biggest reasons I love working with medicinal mushrooms, because they're going to support the tissues all the way through. And what a lot of people are trying to work on is they're trying to work on these chronic inflammatory patterns that are laying at the, laying in out those long-term goals. But along the way, we really need our gut inflammation taken care of if we expect, our joints to improve, or, they're definitely not separate. And we'll start to see the signs and improvement in those first tissues that they get in the way the most. If you have somebody who is, has a chronic cough, the body will attend that inflammation first. Our bodies are so wise, and they will send the medicine where it is most needed. So, so that is how I tend to look at it in the what can I expect. And but when we are looking at that response in the short term, yeah, mushrooms can, and just our grocery store mushrooms can do incredible work in the short term. We don't have any on the table at the moment because they are out of stock from the supplier, but shiitake tend to be one of the go-tos, as well as maitake, when it comes to bringing down inflammation in the short term during an illness. I would say that it is more commonly shiitake that people discuss when it comes to the antimicrobial aspect, like really, like, you know, all the way from within the mouth to down the throat and within the gut. Shiitake have this incredible ability to manage excess bacteria within the body. I mean, it's incredible. You can cut a shiitake and put it right on an affected wound, just a little slice, and if you got an infection, yeah, you got a shiitake Band-Aid. You know, that'll do it. I mean, it might not be the first thing you reach to, but it once was. You know, one of the things people would really, focus on more. But
Dried and fresh.
Dried and fresh.
So just reconstitute them and.
Yeah, so like if you're gonna work with shiitake and you're sick, you could still get benefit from sautéing and then simmering for at least an hour and a half. But if you're gonna work with a dried shiitake or maitake, you really should simmer it. Like just the kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but just like the drying process really shores up those proteins, and you are gonna want to make it into a broth with either of them. If you like, yeah, I mean, I just don't. It's also just not very appealing to reconstitute dried shiitake and saute them. I mean, it's generally not what people are drawn to anyway. But so in the maitake world, since it's first on the packet and I jumped ahead, oops. We generally see people working with maitake when we're really seeing those excesses. Like that tends to be the conversation around maitake in traditional Chinese and Japanese medicine when we're seeing these excesses. So really high inflammation, it's going to be another one of those ones that's considered cooling. And because it is especially high in the beta-glucan content, and it is easier to break it apart with a maitake. It's going to be one of our more fragile mushrooms, and it will be one of the ones that you don't have to worry as much about cooking it quite so long. Maitake is a lovely choice when you want something delicate that you can, get the benefits from tonight. I love the tradition around maitake of really being, viewed of bringing down these risk factors. It's a lovely choice for people who have health risk factors that are in the in the heart disease world, in the chronic inflammatory world, or working with trying to prevent cancer remission. But I do see a lot of people. A lot is relative, but more than once is enough for me. And then my teachers have discussed it as well with helping to bring down the inflammation in the urinary tract, which is definitely one of those ones that if you're working with mushrooms to support your inflammation, you want to see that. You do not want inflammation in your urinary tract messing up your life. I mean, you want that quick. And maitake is going to be one that it seems to have a particular affinity for cooling that. Bless you. For cooling that inflammation. And I but and then when people are working with maitake for their urinary health. It can pair really well with other mushrooms that support the kidneys, like tremella and poria. But those ones are ones we aren't covering in this class as much. But I love the tradition around maitake as this, really like a loving gift, and like they were really guarded in feudal Japan as like way more valuable to bring as a gift than gold. They've been known for so long to be, restore the wealth of the, restore the health and, like really in visible terms. And because they help with activating our T cells and our B cells and help our macrophages, or basically our big pathogen eaters. I think that's one of the main reasons that you can see that inflammation support within illness so quickly. So they do have some antimicrobial properties, not as much as shiitake, but you can really see that that immune support in the short form. So with maitake for sure. I really encourage people to start viewing the mushroom section as a I feel like I'm going to get sick. I am sick. I'm trying to get better, and I'm worried I'm going to get sick again. Help the body have more resources at home base to be able to, I think a lot of times people are going to reach for, or at least people coming into the co-op are going to reach for aromatics, things to get things moving, garlic and onion and ginger. I mean, I can't stop talking about ginger. I mean, I'm like, I should tattoo ginger on my face so I could just point. I mean, but we can look to herbs for their, really their actions and being able to motivate our fluids and things like that. But mushrooms, they're giving us that deep bone marrow support of being able to let our body have enough tools to do the work, instead of necessarily needing to pick. It's like, okay, I'm so sick, I can barely even think about what my symptoms are right now. Do I need mullein or do I need ginger? I don't even know anymore. I'm exhausted. Mushrooms will help your body know what to do instead of necessarily needing to think it through and be like, oh, I don't even know how to help myself right now. Well, mushrooms will help your body know what to do because they're giving that immune support right at the storehouse level. And maitake are one of those. I mean, really, but maitake are especially well studied, as well as shiitake, for that supporting the cells needed within the immune response. Really helping us remember that's really what our bone marrow is for. It's really sending out all those cells. But yeah, do you have a thought, Crystal?
I was kind of thinking of when we're talking about sauteing and cooking and trying to do that as long as we can. I'm also thinking maybe don't be afraid to add more oil, more butter, keep the lid on it so it'll steam too and keep some of what may be evaporating off in back in the dish. That's another like little tips that can
cool.
Help you extract and keep more of that medicinal value of them if you're just kind of cooking them.
Well, and I feel like that's especially when it comes to shiitake, one of their, like those, or like some of the antimicrobial action is going to be coming from the aromatics. I mean, a nickname for them translates to fragrant mushroom. And so when we're working with shiitake, I do feel like, covering the lid is, not only going to help break it down, but you'll get those like antiseptic aromatics, kept in. But the cook time is not I understand it can definitely be a barrier sometimes, but I also think when working with mushrooms to help us get better, it could be an invitation to rest. To have these long cooking times. I put this on the stove. I'm not allowed to do anything else but sit at the table and enjoy myself. I can put these aromatic herbs in there with it. My ginger's going in there with it. I'm gonna stand there and breathe. My kitchen is filling with, with aromatic therapeutic steam. There are ways that we can make the preparation method, even while sick, be paired with other practices we've been trying to do to support our stress, to support our convalescence. I do think that, I think that once we can get over the hump of the preparation time, I think that it can invite, other healthy habits into that practice. Yeah.
How long could you store a broth?
Yeah. So one nice thing about mushroom broths is they do keep a little longer than in the fridge than a meat broth. I would say I would use it within a week. But it would freeze really well. You could always, you could freeze it in kind of meal size, containers, or, and then, and also, it'll can up with a little less, nervousness in my, if you're somebody who likes to can, I'm more nervous about canning a meat broth, even though it's totally fine. But I feel like I personally, it's easier for me to feel secure about my mushroom broths. Just because that's me, and I'm not the most experienced canner out there. But
And thinking of canning it, I don't remember but the pH level is something important in canning. So if it's not as acidic as you need it to be, which I don't remember what it ought to be.
Oh yeah, gosh.
But then you can add some lemon juice or add something to it to make sure that you have that acidity level that you want to make it safe, shelf stable.
Yeah. And and then some people, they will, you can prepare a broth powder by, if you're somebody that has a dehydrator, or you can always do it with an oven on low. You can actually make the broth with something like shiitake, maitake, portobello, that oyster, anything that will blend with an immersion blender, or if you really want to pull it out of the pot, you can do that. But how I would do it is I would just make my broth. It's in the Instant Pot. I've left it overnight because it's just easier for me. I wake up, I got my immersion blender, I blend it up until it's just terrible looking, and then just looks like, wow. And then just blend it as much as possible, and you pour that, just pour all of it into a pan, pop it into your oven at the lowest temperature possible, or your dehydrator if you would like, and then you have would be called an extract powder that is fully available to the it's already been extracted, but you can just you can dissolve that in hot water. You can add that to any meal, soup, risotto. If you dehydrate the slurry of mushroom broth, and you could flavor it. You could make it be a homemade seasoning mushroom seasoning powder. It's a little tedious. It's a little tedious the first time, but then you could have it for a long time. And so if you want to incorporate it in your life every day, that is a delicious way to incorporate it. And I feel like I think getting at least some shiitake in that blend would just add a little more like umami boost, because then you just have like this flavor powder with if. Yeah, exactly. And then also from a like I can use this when I get sick standpoint. It's nice to have a good amount of that shiitake in there, because it's just the powerhouse of the antimicrobial action. And you can do that sort of thing with other medicinal mushrooms, but it'll just be more work with a woody like shelf mushroom. I mean, you might break your immersion blender, so that is a little bit more of something that could be accessible for people, where all you need is a pot, a blender, an oven, and a tray, and then the mushrooms and water.
And that's like a big process initially, but then having that mushroom powder is so easy to work with.
Yeah.
From there into your smoothies, into your soups, as a seasoning, like you said.
Yeah, and that can, and that's what a lot of the mushroom brands are doing, except they add a alcohol process in there, but a lot of times you will have an extract that's been strained and then dried. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a valid blend. That's like what's in our tea. I used a reishi extract powder added to our tea today. But when you make a mushroom extract powder that is blended and then dried, those beta glucans are the very structure of the mushroom, and so you will lose some when you strain it out. And so if you can have something that's been cooked for a long time and then you're eating all of it, you can get the most benefit out of those mushrooms. And you wouldn't want to just you wouldn't want to just blend it in water uncooked, because then you might as well just eat it raw at that point. And then we've covered how that's not ideal. You're just kind of wasting your money and maybe irritating your gut. So
for people who are histamine intolerant, there's a weird line wherein mushrooms can cause histamine release, which can then inflame a histamine intolerance situation. Is that remedied in part by breaking them down by long, slow cooking? And because raw mushrooms are the worst for histamine release.
Yeah. And
not
then,
just for the difficulty of the
and that's not just because of that's not just because of the difficulty of the breaking down the chitins. I'm forgetting the name of the compound that raw mushrooms give off, and that triggers that, and that's what's going on there with like raw mushrooms. I didn't write it down. It starts with a T. But there's
I don't know what it is.
That's okay. No. But there is a compound that raw mushrooms contain that is directly
related to histamine.
Yeah. Yep. And so if you have histamine issues, I would cook your mushrooms as long as possible. But once you cross that, 2-hour mark, and the biggest tell is you'll see the liquid start to thicken. Like you'll see those beta glucans again. They're soluble. They absorb water, and so then when you can tell your liquid that you're cooking it in has begun to thicken, okay, great. They've been busted out of their little protein prison, and they are now in the broth. And so then you have both that constituent that's histamine triggering and it has been broken down and like a long time ago, and then the chitins have been broken down enough to release the polysaccharides and thicken the water. So if you didn't look at the time, that's how you know. And so you'll notice that happening a lot sooner with maitake, than you would with like a polypore. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people are a fan these days of deep frying mushrooms, which just sort of makes my skin crawl.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't seem like it's tasty.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's the best. It seems to me like it's because of the inflammatory capacity
Yeah.
of frying. It seems like it's like a double whammy of like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Is that true, or is that just me?
I mean,
my
like, I do love like being shocked how much lion's mane tastes like chicken substitute when fried. I mean that's
a textural thing
delicious.
almost.
It's a texture thing, lovely. I can't confirm this, but my gut is that I would take care of like the irritant to the that of a raw mushroom. But no, that's not going to break it down enough for it to potentially not be irritating. And also, like, it'd probably take care of that, like, on the outside. I mean, how big is the mushroom piece? I mean, it's a valid food, as long as you're, like...
I mean, the protein's still there. But
Yeah.
in terms of the bioavailability and the...
Oh, yeah. I would...
Like those corn.
That would go into the...
Yeah.
That would go into the fun mushroom category. Well, not that category, but yeah, but I would not consider that like going into your like I took care of my heart health.
And I'm also thinking of that might depend even a little bit more too on how soft or hard the mushroom.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
you wouldn't want to do a harder one fried
Deep fried
anyway,
version,
but
no.
But I've
like
seen
lion's
maitake.
mane is so wet that I think maybe that
Right.
maybe a little
Yeah. How
more-
long you fry? I mean, it's so hot.
yeah,
I
not
mean,
quite
that's the Wild West. That's for sure. I have no idea. But I would because I mean, there's nobody that is out there studying deep fried mushrooms, and they won't. That's not going to happen. Because of that, I mean, I wouldn't. I wouldn't put it in your positive points category. Yeah. And then the proof would be in the digestion for sure if that's an irritant, but since it's covered in like overheated oils, I mean, it's not a very good control either. So, I wouldn't consider that like a medicinal form. Yeah. I mean, even if it was like fried enoki, which is going to be like the most delicate mushroom we have available would be the enoki mushroom. I mean, no. So, and I guess that does bring me into. I just want to note a couple, really notable properties of oyster and enoki before I discuss forest mushrooms. But I recently learned that oyster mushrooms. They have a couple really unique properties when it comes to both cardiovascular health and respiratory health. So I didn't realize that oyster mushrooms, not only are they a really beautiful source of those beta-glucans that help to absorb free cholesterol in the bowel, they are a natural source of a version of lovastatin. So they actually can help directly reduce cholesterol, which has been able to be done in animal studies. I hadn't found human studies yet, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. I just hadn't been able to locate them for this class yet. And so it just reminded me as well that, heart health is a holistic picture, and having healthy fats that we're cooking our mushrooms in, as opposed to just like saying anything goes, is important. Oyster mushrooms can be and enoki, although generally there's only so much we'd have available to us of enoki, but have some really have some interesting capacities when it comes specifically to the cardiovascular benefits, but oyster especially in that cholesterol picture. And then about oyster, I also recently learned that they contain a compound called pleurin that I wasn't familiar with before. That's really readily available from, again, through our digestive lining. And so you're going to get that lovely digestive inflammation reduction from oyster mushrooms just by nature of them being beautiful, silky, soluble mushrooms. But the pleurin, this didn't even make it into the packet, but the pleurin, it is going to be it's a compound that reduces inflammation really rapidly and helps to clear mucus from the respiratory tract. And so in Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, both these systems acknowledge that mucus is, like the seat of mucus in the body isn't the lungs, it's the gut. And so I think oyster mushrooms are a beautiful reminder that we are approaching our lung health by way of the gut. And so we, if we consume oyster broth or something like a product like Pleuromax that's like made from the pleurin extract on an empty stomach, then we can absorb this pleurin compound that helps us to it's pretty much a reflex in our what's called our goblet cells that we have all throughout the body that it's basically senses within the digestive tract how much mucus is required. And so when we, for example, when we expose our goblet cells to a slippery compound like marshmallow root, it triggers the mucous membranes in the rest of the body to produce more mucus. Yay, we're moist. And so we don't have to disperse marshmallow root messengers all throughout the body and with marshmallow name tags on. It's our goblet cells that sense to that slipperiness, and we're like, yay, we have enough. Abundance. And so those same goblet cells are the ones that are absorbing this pleurin compound, and they are have this anti-inflammatory reflex to the mucous membranes to clear out mucus. So and to that, okay, I can relax the inflammation in all of my mucous membranes in the lungs, and it's not necessarily that it even has to be it's not that the pleurin is doing all of this work sent throughout the body all on its own, is that we absorb it into the gut and then our lungs can have a better time. And I think that's fascinating.
It's just so smart.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And so that's why, for example, this oyster mushroom extract product, the Pleuromax from Terry Naturally, they say to take it on an empty stomach because it's absorbing into the gut so it can get to your lungs. So cool. I just love the human body. So, and so if you were to take something like this, you'd take it on an empty stomach. But if you were sick, if you were respiratory sick and you want to make a broth and have it really, really affect the inflammation in your lungs, as fast as possible, you'd want to have that be really the first thing that you drink, and before your meal, which I think also is probably the easiest thing when you're really sick too. Can be, I'm just taking this broth and having it really blanket the digestive lining is so therapeutic, both to the digestive lining itself and to the lungs. We're going to get the best action to the lungs when we expose our gut lining to it directly. That effort pairs really well with turkey tail, which is another one that has some specific traditional application in bringing down that lung inflammation. And if the lung capacity is really struggling, you could consider working with a cordyceps powder or tincture, in that effort. If somebody came in and said, all right, my lungs are killing me and I want to work with only mushrooms, they could work with the oyster extract, and then they could work with like a cordyceps tincture to really help with that like desperation of breath, so that, or maybe they have a, chronic inflammatory lung issue, and they want to, work with the turkey tail and the reishi, long term as well. That would be a really beautiful holistic picture for lung health with mushrooms. You could work with that grouping. That would I love the sound of that. But yeah, and just remembering this this gut lung connection is a beautiful one with mushrooms. That it's all the same effort. Yeah. And while I did just turn the page, I'm actually going to go backwards because that's how I was feeling today. But those mushrooms just put me right. Yes. So we're going to go back to the birch polypore phase. I do want to pause and pause and acknowledge that it is 4:20. Which means that we actually have less time remaining than I thought. And so would you all rather we spent time on questions, or would you rather hear about mushrooms in Maine's forests?
I have to leave
At 4:30.
Yeah.
Great. I will not keep you over. But I just want to leave space in case people wanted to discuss specific questions. Otherwise, I will go on to discuss just one of the mushrooms in Maine's forests.
A question about
Great.
the mushrooms in Maine's forests.
Great.
I'm very sad that when I walk the trails now, I'm seeing fewer and fewer of the
You think?
mushrooms. And I made friends with specific, like, this one is a friend and that one is a friend. And so people are wildcrafting very close to the trail.
Yeah.
They're not going into the woods to get them.
Yeah.
Are there guidelines, or I know some of these grow relatively quickly, so it's not
Yeah.
the end of the world. But I do miss my friends from last winter because they particularly are noticeable when the trees are bare and the snow comes, because they act like little shelves.
Yeah.
So is there education in the community about wildcrafting away from the site of the trails, or
Yeah.
is it just my personal beef?
Yeah, no, I think that's incredibly, I think that's incredibly important, and I'm glad that I am glad that we discussed mostly mushrooms within the grocery store in this class, and when talking about accessible mushrooms, because the world is not ours. Mushrooms are not ours. They belong to themselves. They belong to the trees. If a mushroom were to think about its life, we're a part of the community, but their community is the trees they live on and the beetles that carry their spores, and so and it's incredibly important that we can be humble and stay in our lane a little. And when I first brought up teaching mushroom classes at the co-op to one of my coworkers who I deeply respect, she told me that one of the mushroom foragers in the community she had spoke to said, "I wish people would stop talking about medicinal mushrooms, and I wish they would. There's too much excitement about it, and people need to relax and give the forest a break." And I respect that take. I think that's really fair, and I think that whenever possible, if we can support our health with mushrooms within the grocery store section, or mushrooms that we are we're in relationship with those trees, on the land we live on. We have, an understanding of the needs of that section of the forest. those are not things that are in many of our lives, actually, understanding the needs of the trees on the land we live on. That's not a simple one. So I would encourage it, instead of seeing like any trail, oh, it's just the wild, it's mine, it's frontiersman thinking, and we're trying to grow away from that. That's also healing, healing away from thinking like a colonizer. That's also healing, So when it comes to harvesting mushrooms from the wild, I definitely encourage like that returnership, like that, like I really know these trees. Like I loved hearing you say I knew which mushrooms were gone. I noticed them specifically going. I think that is the type of relationship we should engender before we would actually approach and take the fruiting body of a mushroom. However, I will say that the fruiting body is not the entity. Like the fruiting body is it's a fruit. Like it's not, because it's a fungi, but it's it is just the tip of the real being who it. So you want to see not the health of the fruiting body. You want to be able to spend enough time where you can see the health of the network underneath it. So, for example, red-belted polypore is the most abundant mushroom, most abundant shelf mushroom in Maine, because it's Fomitopsis pinicola. It grows on pines. Yeah, so I have many examples because I love them, and they grow all over the land that I live on, and I'm able to watch them grow up. However, this should never have picked that one because it's so young and they're an annual mushroom. Why did I do that? Because I was overly excited. And now I know better. But this shows some of the growth phase of, a perennial mushroom. That's what I meant to say. They're a perennial mushroom. They keep growing for years. But when you see a flush of Fomitopsis pinicola, what you want to look for is that entire fallen tree is myceliated. You want to see that maybe it's not the only tree that's myceliated. You can look at one mushroom, and then you want to see many, many, many around you. You want to see the fertility of the network right in front of you. If you can only see one tree that's myceliated, wait to come back. You want to let those fruiting bodies do their job, that is continuing to spore, and you want to see many mushrooms on that tree, and you want to take 10%. Like you'll see guidelines from longer ago when it comes to wild crafting. Never take more than a third. A third is way too much. If there's 5 and you took 1, that's 20%. You don't come back for a long time. Also because why do I have 4 of these? I should have cut them down, or I should have chopped them into chunks immediately. They should be in my body and not on this table. 1 is more than enough for me to teach this class. So right in front of me is mistakes that I made in wild crafting. I didn't need to pick this mini to build a relationship, or to have medicine. So when we do work with mushrooms for medicine, let it be more than curiosity. Go ahead, do participate. We are part of the natural world. That's okay. But really, really actually work with it. Like, first of all, like I could never cut this down without really like risking cutting my finger off. Like, you should chunk it down into its parts immediately and really, really learn from that mushroom in your body now. really honor it. Like, don't do what I did and just hoard mushrooms that you should have cut down that day, and now you're like, oh, dang, it's too late. Unless I really, so.
Did you have a cart, just a part of it, and leave some?
Yeah, so.
I don't know how hard it is to do that.
Yeah, so one thing that some people will do is take the growing layer, and I'm not skilled at doing that. You can find resources to learn how to do that. To me, it always feels like more disrespectful than taking the whole thing and because if you do take the whole mushroom, you will trigger the mycelium to start fruiting again in that spot. But yeah, I mean, I just don't. You can take this white layer, with a tool, and it will continue to grow again. I haven't done that before because I'm not experienced with it. But some people will do that with perennial mushrooms, where you'll just shave off the growing layer, and so yeah, maybe I'll learn how to do that.
I'm thinking of the flip side of that forager's concern, that education can help us to be aware of how to, instead of just kind of hearing from a side source, ooh, mushrooms are exciting, then that might get you to go out there and do it. Whereas having thorough education has us discussing and thinking about these things.
Right.
And remembering also, we can grow our own mushrooms.
Yeah.
And there's companies like North Spore, which is a Maine company that makes it super duper easy to grow mushrooms in a bag on your counter,
Yes.
or the spore plugs that you put into a dead log.
Yeah.
And so we can be thinking about trying to grow and give back, inoculate more than we take.
Yeah, exactly. And we can be in those relationships with wild mushrooms too. If we know where the tree is, if we know where the mushrooms are, we can come back and take a spore print and move those spores to a neighboring tree of the same species. We can be in relationship where we're doing, we're helping with the reproductive process of those mushrooms.
You can also use a mesh bag, right? So when you're walking through the woods and you've collected some mushrooms and it's in the mesh bag, that you kind of jostling it along the way might help populate, spread some spores.
And I do feel like focusing on these incredibly abundant ones like red-belted polypore and birch polypore is way more responsible than hunting chaga. I purposefully did not cover chaga in depth in the last class or this class because I would encourage people to not work with it unless incredibly necessary. I think that working with every other antioxidant-rich mushroom first is ideal before working with chaga because it's the longest living, mushroom generally that we other than agarikon that we might work with. So I really appreciate that question.
I was so excited after your last class, and then when I went into the woods this winter, I was expecting to. Now I'm like, oh, now I know what you are. Mm-hmm. They're all gone on the trail that I normally see them. Specific ones.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
But I think I agree that education is better than no class.
Yeah, I
but
don't.
But important to that is a conscious, ethical consideration.
Yeah, and I don't believe in no contact with it or no wildcrafting. I think there's absolutely a responsible way to do wildcrafting, and it's not the same thing as harvesting a plant that's full of seeds and taking the whole thing, and that there will be no way for it to come back. The mycelium is there and will. It's way stronger than us, So as long as we, the network of, the size of Fomitopsis pinicola is larger than Maine, it's so in every pine forest that is how large the mycelial network will be of those mushrooms. So again, way more responsible than working with chaga. But it's good.
Thank you.
Be mindful. Yeah.
We have some
Oh yeah.
tinctures to take.
Oh, how exciting.